Nice to meet you, Blake.
We've already met, Ken. We know each other quite well, in fact.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. I'm a parent, though.
oh, you're right. Okay, you are not Ken Danford, co-founder and executive director of North Star Self-Directed Learning for Teens. You are a parent, and you are here because you have concerns about the new book that I just published and that you just read. Why are you still sending your kids to school?
So I have this daughter that, saw the book and now she's pestering me, and so I'm kind of annoyed with you.
I
She's
apologize.
she's doing real well in school. I'm a doctor. She's on her way to Yale. She's 15 going on 16, all A's, at the local public school. And, she's a poet, she's a writer, kind of a cook. And, she's just really cynical about her high school. And we've just told her, make the most of it, get you good grades, we'll get you on to Yale, and, your life will be fine later. This is high school, this is how it is. You got to put up with it. And now she's like, she just thinks like she's above it all and doesn't want to go anymore. And she's like, Dad, I don't have to. So I'm a little bit frustrated.
Well, did she give you any other reasons that it felt really important to her to maybe consider an alternative to conventional school?
Well, she feels she's just like wasting her time in school. She goes every day. She gets her grades. She doesn't really connect with the kids there. She's a bit of an eccentric, like I was saying, poet, writer kind of person. And she just feels like disconnected and ready to move on already. And I'm like, but it's high school. You got to do it. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And, you got to do the grades. You got to do the AP classes, do the literary club and, do your SATs and, college is coming. Just, put up with it.
And I assume you went through a similar process to go through high
Yeah,
school and college
right.
yourself. Yeah.
Everybody does, right?
And you're a successful professional at
I'm a
this
doctor.
point.
I just told you, yes.
Well,
Yes.
okay, let's talk about this. Maybe she would be fine if she just stuck it out in high school. Maybe she would just be bored and frustrated, but she would manage, she would survive, and then, yeah, it would be a very comfortable situation for you as a parent to see her jumping through all of the familiar hoops that lead to a successful career. That's the story we tell ourselves. But let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with any other paths to, let's say, to a competitive four-year college that your daughter could take instead of going to high school where she feels fairly miserable every day?
No.
Okay. What about
No. Go to high
community
school.
college? What
No.
about
It's get into Yale, man. That's where I went.
how about this? How about if your daughter stopped going to high school, she could potentially go to community college. I assume you have a community college in your area.
What, you mean now?
Yeah, right now at age 16.
What, you just go to community college when you're 16?
It depends on where you live, but in most places, yeah, starting at age 16, sometimes earlier, a high school student can sign up either as a dual enrollment student, so they're still doing high school, but they're getting college credits at the same time, or she could just completely stop going to high school and sign up as a full-time or part-time community college student, and then she gets to choose her classes. She has a bit more control over her environment. She's getting real college credits, and hopefully she feels a lot more engaged.
Yeah, but like, it's community college. Like, how does that compare to like doing AP classes at the local high school?
Well, AP is college credit, community college is college credit. It's essentially the same thing. I think you might actually have college admissions people looking more favorably upon an 18-year-old who has dozens of real college units instead of looking just like every other high school graduate.
I don't know, man. I kind of think like what they do at our local high school for AP English is kind of harder than English 101 at the dopey community college here, dude.
It may be true, but I think in most college admissions uh, officials' eyes, it's essentially the same thing. And I think more importantly than that, more importantly than high academic standards, maybe your daughter's kind of mental health and sense of well-being, and again, her sense of control over her life for these next few years. That can really compound. And if she has mental health issues, if she's surrounded by other young people who have mental health challenges, that can be a really serious thing.
No, she's mentally fine. She's just bored and impatient, and she's trying to find a shortcut. She's trying to like cut the corner and take an easy way out, and skip high school and get onto the college. So I'm not sure I believe in like cutting the corner and skipping.
Well, consider this. Maybe cutting the corner is a reflection of her ambition, and right now she is being throttled. She is not allowed to go at maximum speed due to the high school that she's in. That's why she's bored. That's why she's frustrated. Even if she can succeed, why not take the throttle off? Why not let her go at maximum speed? Let her choose what she's interested in, go at it full time, and get out of the bureaucracy and the stiltedness of regular high school.
Yeah, well, one reason is that she's already declared that if she, could do this other thing, she's not doing anybody's biology, and she's probably not doing anybody's calculus. So now if she stays in school, she's going to do all the normal stuff. For the AP thing, we got it going. Everybody else is doing it. She's on the path. She's just going to keep going, and we're going to get her off to, like I say, to Yale, like I went there. And then she can be a poet and do her writing there. It'll be fine. If she gets out of high school now and just quits and does a community college poetry class, she's not going to do any biology or math. And she's going to go get her, work at a bookshop, and then, we're doomed. Then what? Then she's going to do more community college, and then what? UMass? She's not going to Yale then.
You are definitely channeling the Yale or jail sentiment that a lot of parents, especially upper middle class.
UMass. I gave you UMass.
Yale or a decent public university in my state. Yes, that doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same way. Consider this. There are lots and lots of homeschoolers out there who have very lumpy academic records, and they are still getting into great colleges, including the Ivy Leagues. I document a lot of them in the book. And actually, I have a whole chapter in the book, a whole section, Ken, about how your kid can get into highly competitive colleges with a highly unconventional background. It's all right there.
So there's two things. One is, could she get into a competitive college? And all right, these kids, and they sort of do something to get in, and you're saying, my daughter could talk her way into some competitive college if she did something other than high school. Maybe. I don't really know that, but I get it. I understand what you're trying to convince me of. But if you go to Yale, man, you got to have already had some biology and chemistry. You got to know your stuff when you get there. You can't have all these blind spots. She's not going to learn the stuff she's supposed to need to know for serious college if she just is a dilettante who does her poetry and doesn't go to high school for real.
A poetry writing dilettante. So, yes, I want to concede that it's possible she might not take advanced biology if you support her as a self-directed learner for the next few years. But I want you to consider that on the other side of this equation, she will probably be going really deep into the stuff that she loves, like poetry, for example. She's going to become a T-shaped person. She already has a good breadth of academic knowledge just by virtue of being in school for so many years and being a successful student. But she's going to go really deep into something, so she'll be like a T, and that is a pretty attractive thing for colleges, whether or not it's Yale. That makes her stand out of the crowd. Right now, she's going to look a lot like all of the other, pretty successful high school graduates who are trying to get into college. And so there's a strong argument to be made here for doing something a bit different without completely giving up all academics, which sounds like what she's going to do.
Yeah, but the downside here, look at the downsides here. The downside of sticking with the known path is that she's frustrated and bored for a couple of years while she does the thing that we know works in our town, in our public school, with her older siblings, what our family's done. We know it works. We stick with it. She's mildly annoyed at us. That's the downside. She's stunted for 2 years because she's got to do her regular high school. We let her run with her other thing. What's the downside there is she runs off and never circles back to doing what she needs to do. And now what?
Well, what is she doing when she runs off? What do you imagine in that nightmare scenario?
Only the things she likes.
Is that horrible? Is this not what you probably want for your kid at the end of the day after all, that she is empowered to do the things that she likes as her full-time?
Yeah, that's what I want.
You're really hung up on Yale there. Okay, it looks like you got to go. Thanks for your time. This has been a great conversation. Oh, look, here's someone else.
Oh, that was fun. Do you like that? Oh wait, let me just read my little summary for a second here, so I get in the spirit here. I need 10 seconds.
Ken Danford, everyone.
All right. All right. Mr. Boles, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you, Ken.
Sorry, I had to laugh. My name is Mr. Boles. Let me try again without laughing.
It's ridiculous, right?
All right. Mr. Boles, I am calling you about my son. He's 14. He's in 8th grade. I feel like we're starting to lose him. He's, kind of a smart aleck, smarty pants kind of guy. He did just fine through elementary school. Has friends, went to school every day. But now in middle school, he just doesn't see the point. He's not trying very hard. He's kind of goofing off. He comes home and he, shuffles his papers around, pretends he does his homework, goes into his room, and I don't know if he's drawing comics or if he's playing video games or if he's I don't quite know what he does in there, but then he comes out and everything's kind of crumpled and he says he did it. And, the teachers are starting to show a little concern that, he's getting C's and occasional, I don't know, he goes every day to school, but he's just kind of like chucking it in now. And, I don't know what to do with him. I'm trying to have his teachers talk to him, his counselors, try to stress the importance of, doing well in school. But he doesn't seem to care too much.
Yeah. How long has this been going on?
About, tail end of 7th grade and, 8th grade, really.
Okay. So for at least a full year.
School fine. He's a nice boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But at this point, it doesn't seem like just a passing phase. This is something that's stuck around for a while now.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's just more sullen. He's just more withdrawn from us now. He doesn't talk to us anymore. And he just, tries to stay away from us and keep us off his back.
Yeah. Well, to a certain degree, this might just be adolescence, normal kind of breaking away from family, getting into other things. But are you concerned that he was into school and he was happy to do his homework and participate in class before, and now that's not really happening?
Yeah. I mean, he can come home and screw around and play. That's okay. But he needs to do well in school. And, and he's just being immature. He's just kind of a goof now. I mean, he's just not. I mean, I'm not sure what to make of him now.
He's kind of acting like a knucklehead.
Yeah, I mean, he still goes out with his friends. Still, Friday night they go watch movies and stuff. Just not taking anything seriously anymore, and doesn't like talking about it with us.
Okay.
I don't think he's really into drugs or anything. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think he's just being a goof and just I just see this going from D's to worse, and I don't really know what to do about it.
Do you know how he spends his time, his free time?
Well, like I said, he's in there. I don't know if he's drawing his comics or he's talking to his friends. He he hooks up with his friends and they go to the movies or something.
Okay.
He orders free stuff.
All right, Mr. Danford, I'd like you to consider this, that there might be a perfectly good reason that your kid is feeling pretty checked out of school and he's not investing much time or energy into getting good grades. And that's because he perceives that not much of importance is happening at school, that the classes and the assignments are just sort of made up work. There's a lot of kids who figure this out in middle school, junior high age range, and that's when they start to check out. They perceive it to be not important work.
Well, I don't really argue with that. I mean, I went through it. We just did it. It's one thing to think it's stupid, but you can be think it's stupid and just do it and get the good grades in a short amount of time. He takes longer not to do it than he would take to just do it.
Yeah, so you were able to just push through it when you were his age.
Yeah, and now he's just making a mess of everything.
Yeah. One thing to consider is that school at this moment in history might be quite a bit different from school when you were in 8th grade. And there's a lot more standardized testing. There's a lot more of an academic pressure cooker environment right now. You might have been in a bit more of a relaxed, hands-off scenario in the 80s. Another thing to consider is there are many kids out there, homeschoolers, alternative school students, who they just stop going to school for a while. They say, okay, my kid's in a phase right now where they're really not focused on school, and it seems like we could help them instead be really focused and engaged on something else. We could help them figure out what that is. And the kid stops going to school. It could be for half a year, it could be 2 years. There are these interesting places called Liberated Learners Centers where you can just enroll with the state as a homeschooler. Then you can go hang out at these centers and get inspired by other kids and by staff members there. And then you can still go back to school if you want to and need to. This happens all the time. It's very normal.
You think he just let him just not go to 8th grade?
Correct.
The rest of 8th grade.
Yeah. There's this blog post you should Google. It's called 8th Grade Out. And the argument is, let your 8th grader have a gap year. We often think about gap years as happening after high school or college, but there's a really strong case to be made for a middle school gap year, because this kid is probably feeling a lot of pressure without seeing a lot of reason for working hard. You could just take the pressure off for a little while, and 9th grade is actually a really easy time to get back into the regular school system. Maybe he could just stop going to school for all of 8th grade.
But if he takes 8th grade off, how is he ever going to manage 9th grade? He's not going to go back. He's just going to fall off the edge if he takes 8th grade off. And plus, now 8th grade out, he would just be sitting around all the time in our house doing nothing in front of me all day long. I might lose my mind. At least he goes to school sort of and doesn't do it. At least it gives him something not to do. If he just was home in my face, I don't think I could take it.
I get that. Homeschooling is not for everyone, or unschooling, which is the really self-directed version of homeschooling. You might be surprised, though. You might find that once your kid is out of school, that surliness and that withdrawal actually lessens a bit, and you can have an improved relationship with your kid. But let's assume that you really don't have the time, energy, or attention to have your kid at home all the time. Again, consider that there are these alternative schools, these self-directed learning centers. I can point you in the direction of where you might find some in your local area. And you can sign your kid up for one of those. And it's the same kind of idea. It's all interest-based learning. It's low pressure, but the kid's not at home all the time.
So if he doesn't go to school for the rest of 8th grade, and he hangs out with a bunch of other kids who just aren't going to school either, isn't that he's going to become a bum? I mean, my kid, maybe some of these other kids actually read and count and build things. My son, I don't know what he's going to do. He's just going to not do more stuff. I mean, he can be a bum.
So consider this, Mr. Danford. Right now, the social environment that your kid is in might be turning him into a bum. I don't know. I don't know your kid's specific situation, but there's this mentality which is bred in schools, and it really picks up steam in middle school, that learning is for suckers. You do as little work as you can to get by, and to actually try to put effort into things. That is for losers. And so that is a pretty insidious attitude right there. Consider that your kid might instead be surrounded by kids who are doing stuff for genuine, intrinsically motivated reasons. And that would be a very good group of peers to be around. And, they're probably free thinkers. They're a bit more creative, open-minded. There's a good argument there.
Yeah, I get the concept that maybe not going to school is better than going to school, especially in 8th grade, for a bunch of kids. I see your point. But it's still hard for me to wrap my head around my son being free. It'd be like letting him win. He's resisted school enough to the point where we just say, all right, you win. And all the thing we've been battling this whole year is just we just suddenly lose and give in and let him have his way. It feels like indulging him.
Well, the battle analogy is interesting because this is often what happens with school-related tension and anxiety, is that it pits parents against students. You become the homework cop. You become the enforcer when you could just be their loving dad. And so consider that this is a way to be on the same team as your kid. And you would have a shared goal then, which is, okay, what do you find most interesting, most engaging? What kind of work and challenges are worth your time? Let's figure this out together instead of me constantly breathing down your neck to try to get you to do this stuff, which I don't even believe in myself.
So, all right, I get that. Your point is if he stays in school, he might really turn into a real bum because doing 4 more years of C- work and goofing around is not
and,
not up to my
and
standard.
being labeled a bum by the
Yeah,
system. That's
yeah.
a fairly traumatic thing for
At
some
least
kids.
he'd at least be busy every day going to school and get a diploma out of it. But yeah, I see that. But seriously, if he does his 8th grade gap year and kind of doesn't do anything and falls off a cliff, doesn't want to go to 9th grade, and I can't make him go back, now what? Now he's what? Working at McDonald's? What is he doing then?
He's probably too young to
I think
work at McDonald's.
worse.
Yeah, it could be scary for a while. It could feel like your kid is hitting rock bottom because they've completely left the traditional system. They're no longer hitting all these milestones that make parents feel really secure. I mean, I get that. It's a real fear for a lot of families. What I've seen working with families who do let their kids do that, these are often self-described unschooling families. They see their kid essentially go through a big hard reset of their motivation system. They do nothing for quite a while. The rule of thumb is maybe 1 year of school equals 1 month of doing nothing once you choose to leave school. And so that's a real possibility. And so they might just be figuring out, hey, what's worth doing? What's interesting? They're figuring out that boredom is actually pretty lame and that being bored for too long is not a fun thing. And so very consistently, these kids who seem like they're doing nothing for a while, they then start to develop real interests, real motivations. They take on responsibilities themselves. And once they figure out they want to do something like go to college or to get into a certain career, they realize, okay, no one's going to make me do this but me. So I will jump through these hoops. I'll get a GED. I'll go to community college. Maybe I'll go back into high school. There are all these different paths to becoming a functional adult.
Functional paths. That's what I'm. So you're telling me that in 8th grade we pull him, give him this gap year. He's going to do nothing for 8 months because he's in 8th grade. So next year, when 9th grade hits, he might finally get bored of doing nothing and start doing things. And then if he starts doing things in 9th grade, but he doesn't want to go to school,
Here's
then
what happens.
you said what? What does he do? He does what?
Here's what happens, Mr. Danford. This is what I've
Yeah.
seen over and over again. I can't guarantee that this will happen for your kid, but I can tell you that there's an overwhelming amount of anecdotal evidence and also some actual research that supports this. Once these kids figure out that they want to do something, they do it very quickly. They learn what they need to learn. I know lots of stories of kids who didn't do any math, and then they realize that they need to know algebra in order to get into a certain college, and they just consume math. They'll go into Khan Academy, they'll find a tutor, they'll find a friend, and they will consume all this math because they finally have a reason to do it. That's what you're giving your kid. You're giving your kid this gift of having intrinsic motivation, of knowing what they want, and then being able to go for it at full speed. And so they catch up really quickly.
Yeah, I want the money back guarantee. And not money back, but I want if we pull him from school and he falls off the deep end and doesn't amount to anything, then what? What if it doesn't work? Then he's just a dropout who didn't we called him a homeschooler, he didn't do anything, and then he's just 16-year-old bum.
Yes, it might feel like he's a 16-year-old bum for a while, but I think that in all likelihood, this 16-year-old is going to have a much healthier relationship with you, his parents, and he will feel supported. He will not feel constantly pressured. And so maybe that 16-year-old will become a 17 or 18 or even a 19-year-old who's still trying to figure his stuff out. Now, unless you have a situation where you really can't support this kid, you can't house and feed him, once he turns 18 for reasons I'm not sure of, then that might be one thing. But if you are like most of the families I know where it's not actually a hardship to continue supporting your kid as they figure their lives out, then give them the time that he needs to figure this out. And I can't 100% guarantee you, but I can tell you again, over a long period of time, I've seen kids consistently figure their stuff out because kids want to grow up. They want to become adults. And you know what, Ken? A lot of these kids who are finishing high school and then finishing college, they are in that very same boat. They're still going back to live with mom and dad, and they are taking the time to figure stuff out. And so this is actually a fairly normal thing. It just happens sooner or later for certain kids. Looks like you got to go.
I'll think about that one for a while. Yeah, well, maybe we'll bring the boy in and talk to you, see what he has to say about this idea.
I would love to talk with you too.
Make him give me the money back guarantee.
Yeah. Okay, number 3. It's like you've done this before, Ken.
Yeah. All right. No laughing on this one. Let's get serious here. We gotta be sad. Um. Hi, Blake. Yeah, I'm calling you about my daughter. We're kind of in a tough spot here. She's in 7th grade. She's been fighting with her friends. She's kind of depressed. Got a little social anxiety too. And last week we caught her with some pills, and it was kind of a scary moment. And we got a counselor, and she's in a therapeutic situation right now. But I don't think we can send her back to the school she's been at. But we don't really know what to do, and we're kind of scared.
All right. Thanks for calling. What did the counselor recommend?
Well, they just recommended this, inpatient, daily treatment thing that she goes to now. We're going to do that for, a month or so while they, see what they can sort out about what's really going on for her. And, then we're just on standby. Option A is to go back to the school she was at, but I think she's just going to get wrapped up with those same girls again. And, it's just a lot of stress and bother. And so I don't really know about what else we would do. And, somebody told me to call you, and here I am. But I don't really understand, I know about private schools, and I don't know if any private school would be better for her either. Same thing. You have to get up every day and go, and the stress and the bother. But, I don't really understand all our options. But, we're starting from a kind of a hard spot.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Tell me again what grade she's in right now?
She's in 7th grade right now.
7th grade. Okay. Yeah, that's a fairly typical time for this kind of stress and difficulty. And
I don't know if it's typical. I don't know everybody else's kids doing this, but maybe. Yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah, well, there's a lot of research showing that especially adolescent young women, there is a sort of mental health crisis happening right now. So she's not the first, for sure. Tell me a bit more about what do you think is stressing her out? Is it just the social situation, her friends? Is it also school?
Yeah, well, it's definitely school to some extent. But, we kind of have some depression in the family that runs through, and, some weeks are harder than others in the first place. But, waking up every day and going there, you have to get up early and get all, gussied up to go. And then, all these different teachers and all these different assignments. And everybody's taking it seriously. And then on top of that, you got these other, competitive social girls. And she doesn't read it right. And then she gets all confused, and she's tries too hard, and she doesn't want to go. And, I don't know. When she doesn't go to school, then we're just dealing with the baseline, kind of like at home, trying to, get through the day. And, it's okay. It's easier at home.
Okay. Well, I'm not a licensed professional in this field, but I've definitely known teenagers who have had similar challenges and have been showing clinical signs of anxiety and depression. And it's tough to piece apart. We might never piece apart what is going on for any one individual. How much of it is school, how much of it is highly personal, how much of it is due to certain friends. But it seems like in your daughter's case, school is definitely bringing her down. And so have you considered just letting her take a vacation from school for a while? That might be all she needs if we're talking about just a few months here, or maybe half a year. That might be all she needs to sort of recover from what's been happening, develop some positive habits again, develop a better self-image, and kind of reassess her relationships with her friends.
Well, she's in this program now. But, I don't know what you mean, like take a vacation from school. Like school has vacation in, winter and...
No, I mean take some serious time away from school. When other kids are there, your daughter's not there.
Skip 7th grade, just take a vacation from seventh grade?
Sure, skip half of seventh grade, skip all of seventh grade, skip all of seventh and eighth grade.
Can't do that. What do you mean?
Yeah, you can legally do that, and you could do it many different ways. You can homeschool. That's legal in all 50 states. You can, and it doesn't have to be school at home. Okay, it could just mean your kid gets to be at home and have that sort of safe and nurturing environment for as long as she needs it. Or you could look for an alternative school that's usually a much smaller, more caring, more personalized school. And some of them are more conventional. They still do academics. Maybe your daughter will thrive there. And some of them are like, we don't force any academics down kids' throats. And I've seen a lot of kids thrive in those environments.
So you mean like some one of these groovy private schools, or that's not really a vacation because you still have to go. You have to get up and go every day to the school, right? I mean, that's not vacation.
Yeah,
that's not,
but
not
it might be worth, let's say, over this next month, when your daughter's really focusing on her health, it might be worth you and her going to visit some of these different schools and just get a little taste for them. Just do like a visit for an hour, for a day. A lot of these schools and self-directed learning centers are really open to that kind of thing.
If we, I mean, I don't think we want to homeschool in my house. I mean, we're not the happiest household to begin with. I mean, we're trying. I mean, we all just kind of do our own thing and mind our own business, but it doesn't seem like that would be homeschooling. Or we're just going to tell us, when we tell them we're going to homeschool, and then what? Then they're going to want to like see stuff. Then that's not vacation either. That's just even worse.
Yeah, it depends on what state you're in. You're in Massachusetts. There are some requirements for homeschooling, but you'll be surprised at how lax and manageable they are. And so you don't have to be teaching your kid English and history and math every single day, and there's not going to be some state official coming in every month to give your kid a test. It's actually a lot more manageable than that. So yeah, your kid can stay home. She can do stuff at her own pace. You should also go visit local alternative schools and self-directed learning centers. Just familiarize yourself with the full variety of options. And I bet your daughter will find at least one of these that seems like a much better fit for her. And it doesn't have to be forever, Mr. Danford. It can be just for a few months or for a year. Until the really critical part of this is over.
Yeah. I'm more about the seventh grade vacation the rest of the year at home rather than at the school. But wait, if you do that, what do you have to show so that you can go to eighth grade next year? I mean, we just tell them we're homeschooling, but secretly it's a vacation. Aren't they going to like test her or something? How do we get her into eighth grade and not have to repeat seventh grade? If we tell her it's a vacation, they'll make her repeat the year.
Yeah, you should use the word homeschooling. And you know what? Different schools and different districts will approach this differently. But I've heard about a lot of schools actually not testing their kids at all. They just say, okay, you homeschooled for seventh grade, come on back for eighth grade. They're often happy to have students back because that means more money for the district.
Well, she won't learn any math. She'll be like behind.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Some families, they say you can homeschool and do whatever you want as long as you still learn some math or as long as you keep up your foreign language. And so that could be a reasonable discussion that you have with your daughter. It's like, hey, do some online math stuff, or we'll get you a tutor, or, there's all these different ways to do it. And I bet your daughter might consider that to be a worthwhile trade-off.
How do you make sure that she just doesn't like sink into further depression? I mean, if we give her this vacation, which she might like, but she just stays home and in her room and listens to her music, which is all sad and how do we like not have it get worse? Like isn't going out good for her?
Yeah, I mean, there's the normal stuff, which is exercise, eating right, getting enough sleep, and social contact too. And so I think that's a good argument for not necessarily homeschooling, but instead finding some sort of community. Some places do have good homeschooling communities or unschooling communities, and it gets usually a bit more tricky once you get up into the adolescent years. There's fewer kids around. But again, this is a good reason to go check out these little alternative schools and self-directed learning centers. And sometimes there's good online communities too. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea for your daughter to continue having social contact and having friends if it's possible. But sometimes when it's not possible, it still might be better for these kinds of kids, at least for a while, to just cocoon up and be around supportive parents and family members And then once they're feeling better, they can go back into the conventional social environment. You want her mental health to improve rapidly pretty soon.
In the cocoon, you're supposed to dissolve and metamorphize into a butterfly, but not and fall off the vine.
Thank you for that colorful analogy.
Yeah.
I think that a butterfly transformation is possible from the point of view of your daughter's anxiety, her engagement, her depression symptoms. I mean, that's stuff that you don't want to risk pushing any deeper because, bad things can happen here. And bad things do happen with kids in school who are facing these kinds of symptoms. And so just try to remove the most likely contender for negative mental health influences. And it sounds like at this moment, that's school.
Yeah, I mean, some of it sounds so good, but then there's this, fear that we're just teaching her to walk away or avoid instead of, cope and deal with it. And on the one hand, it seems really like a relief to just imagine the rest of the year as a vacation. But on the other hand, I fear that's just starting down a bad habit of not really working through one's woes.
I think there's a good distinction to be made between different types of stress. So there's positive stress when a kid signs up for a play and they get nervous about it. That's a good kind of stress. You want to encourage that, right? And then there's tolerable stress, which is when a kid gets bullied at school, but they still have a lot of support at home. And that's okay, we don't want too much of that, but a little bit every once in a while is okay. And then there's toxic stress. And it seems like your daughter seems to be experiencing toxic stress, where it's coming from all these different angles. There's not enough support. You're constantly feeling overwhelmed. It's traumatizing. It's really bad. And that's when really bad things can happen. And so, there's an argument for pushing through it. But if you try to push too hard and there's too much toxic stress, then I don't think that's a great argument. And you can have your daughter at home, or you can have her at one of these alternative schools, and she can still be surrounded by positive, stressful influences. And that might look more like, someone's leading a class on history that sounds kind of interesting, and then she's challenged to learn something that she hasn't learned yet in that class. That's some positive stress that might come from this new self-directed learning environment. And you as her parents can continue to make suggestions about things you could learn, things she could work on, projects she can get involved with. And so it's not just, sitting at home alone in your bedroom scrolling through Instagram for 22 hours a day or going to school. There is a happy medium out there.
All right, I got to tell you one other thing.
All right.
It's already hard enough to tell my parents and my sibling that my daughter's losing it and falling apart. If I say to them that we're just going to give her a vacation the rest of 7th grade, they're just, I can't say it to them. I just can't go home. I can't tell my parents, her grandparents, that we're just going to let her take a vacation for 7th grade. It's just, oh my God, I'll never hear the end of it from my brother. It's something we do in our family.
And I bet they're all highly educated people.
And if I say, alternative school, that's bad enough. But if I say the word homeschooling, I can't even. I don't know what I don't even know. Is there another word? I can't say homeschooling to these people.
Self-directed learning, autodidact. Sometimes it helps if, for example, there's some online school options that are actually very, very low pressure. And sometimes that can help convince skeptical family members that your kid is still in school when really it's a very, very light version of school with not many requirements. But fundamentally, we're dodging the issue here, which is, your daughter's mental health matters more than the judgments of your family members at the end of the day. That's what I believe. I understand that it's going to be uncomfortable for you. And we can talk about different explanations and forms of terminology, but I think you know where the priorities are here.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Well, thank you for now. Maybe I'll bring her in to talk to you.
Love to talk with both of you.
All right. Thank you.
Wow, Ken. You've been me in these situations for what, 25 years now?
Yes.
And how'd I do? Rank me. Give me a grade.
Oh, A+.
A+. Well, I don't know about that.
No, you said yes too many times. You gave into the fears a few too many times.
Oh, so you've learned to push back against the fears?
I see the fear, but you gotta tell me to shut up sometimes. No, that's not really true. That's a misperception. That's not accurate to what really goes on for homeschoolers. You're bringing in some misguided assumptions here. You push back a little harder again. You indulged a lot of my fears in every role play that it's good listening technique. It's a good one-on-one therapy. It works in a private one-on-one conversation as a professional technique all the way through. I think it's okay to push back sometimes with the stuff which is, I know you're getting that from somewhere, but that's not actually accurate to homeschooling over the last 40 years. That's not a thing. I don't know. It's sort of personality type. You know what I mean?
You are a bit more pugnacious than I am, I think.
Yeah.
You're a bit more of a fighter.
You're very agreeable. And you agreed with each thing and then spun it. And I would just say, every now and then, just right back in my face on the front end. But whatever. The last, I was just thinking the last answer. This thing about my parent, I can't tell my parents or my brother or whatever, is like, you're supposed to tell me to shut up and worry about my daughter's health. And then you did, right? I'm sitting here thinking, Blake, man, come on, get me back to my daughter. And then you did. So basically the whole, all three. So A+ for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. That was a fun role play.
Was I a decent parent?
You were. You're tough, but fair. So thanks, Ken.
All right.